Hi, everyone. I'm Robbi Firestone, creator interviewing creators from Web 2 into Web 3. And today we have this unbelievable, incredible treat. We're going to get so much alpha from our guest today, from Bruno Vilela. And I'm just going to read his bio because it's kind of insane that he's here. All right. So Bruno is the founder of Wize Fellaz Nursing Home, which we are going to talk so much about today, an NFT project built around a secret society of elderly heroes who've been fighting evil for millennia, thanks to spring tea, a mystical potion that stops aging and grants special powers. So think about what your special powers would be. Prior to Wize Fellaz, check this out. Bruno was the chief digital officer at JCG, one of Brazil's largest media groups, where he oversaw the digital transformation of legacy media, including the development of digital products and services. It gets better. Hold on. Bruno also worked at Sony Pictures as an artist and a CGI supervisor for the development and execution of visual effects on films such as Matrix Reloaded, Matrix Revolutions, and the original Spider-Man trilogy. Hello. His contributions featured in Superman Returns, The Aviator, and Spider-Man 2. They were nominated for Oscar for Best Visual Effects, and Spider-Man 2 took the prestigious award for Best Visual Effects. So we got an Oscar winner here. Seriously, people.
Oh, that sounds so much better when you read it than when I tell it.
Well, I can read it, but you can do it, which is why you're here. And I'm so excited to talk to you because, as I was explaining to you a little bit ago, my passion is onboarding Web 2 creators who are passionate, mission-driven, and talented and conscious from Web 2 into Web 3, right? Because what you and I, Bruno, know, and what we were discussing is there are VCs everywhere, there's money everywhere. That's common in the NFT space. But what is a little more, what is rare and super rare are brilliant creators who are actually able to come in and build in space and use that Web 2 knowledge to move into Web 3 and even work within that 2.5 space. So Bruno, welcome. I'm so glad you're here. Thank you for taking the time out of your schedule. So first and foremost, what I would like to know about is your journey into NFTs, crypto to NFTs. Did you shoot straight in? What did that look like? Because we are still in year zero, and what you've accomplished already in the NFT space is pretty extraordinary. So give me the dish.
Okay, well, I'm one of those I feel so idiotic because when I first came into contact with crypto, I bought one. I think it was 2010, and I think I bought like one Bitcoin for $200, and I was like, I'm just gonna get one just to see what this is like, right? And I should have gotten like 100 of them at the time, but I was going back. I studied architecture as a youngling. I moved to the United States when I was 21 to work in special effects. I moved to LA. I lived in Minnesota for a while, then I went to Miami for a while, then I ended up in LA. And in Hollywood, I worked primarily with blockbuster films. I have 23 films under my belt overall. Some of the ones that you just mentioned: Spider-Man, Matrix, Superman, Aviator, Watchmen. There's a big list of them. And I would say that my passion is anything that has to do with art and technology. Like wherever the two cross, it's where I'm at. And when I came back, I left LA. I left the United States after 16 years in 2008, and I came back to Brazil. And then I started working as the chief digital officer for a group, OJC, which is a group of legacy media here in Brazil, one of the biggest one. It's and they have multiple television stations, radio stations, newspapers, and whatnot. And my mission there was basically to transform the business model into something that was more aligned with the digital trend that was happening at the time. This is 2009, right? So I was there for like almost 10 years. I left in 2017. During that time, we launched the first paywall in Brazil. We also, in 2015, we won a World Award for Best Mobile News Reading App, and that was given to us by IMA, which is the International News Media Association. It's the largest organization, like international organization for newspapers. So we won the best news reading app for 300,000 subscribers and under, and in the same category, 3,000 subscribers and over, won the New York Times. So it's a very prestigious award, and we're like this tiny development group inside the largest company in Brazil. I think they call it entrepreneur, which is what we were doing there. And so basically we had this innovation lab that was trying all these different things to try and like monetize the web, right, for these legacy groups. And then 2017, I left, and I went on a 2-year sabbatical, moved to Australia, and was like trying to find life, right? What I was going to do for the next few years of my life. I was really tired of what I was doing there. And then in 2019, I opened a company that was starting to design collectible statues. And one of the first things that we did to try and make it more prestigious was that we made them in like limited edition, and we issued a certificate of authenticity that was on the blockchain, basically an ERC20 token. And that was the first time, was in 2019, was when I actually got in contact with NFTs. And for the longest time, what we were doing is basically issuing these certificates. And then in 2021, I became more interested in NFTs, and I was like, I think we need to pivot the company. I think we need to move away from the physicals for a bit and go into this NFT like for real. So starting in January of this year, I started sketching the artwork for Wize Fellaz. And so I basically went back to working solo, and I started working on this collection. I did all the artwork, website, the storytelling, all the lore, the white paper, all the business side of aspect of the project was developed by me. I worked on it for a good 7 months. Starting in March, I got the Arch, which is a prominent member on the on-chain monkey community, basically took notice of the project, and he was like, "Wow, I think you got something interesting here." And he came on as like an informal advisor, right? So he helped like sort of shape the way that the collection was going to go, just in terms of like helping me identify characteristics of the collection that would be really attractive to collectors, because he's got very much of a collector mindset. And so about 3 weeks ago we launched, and it was for my metrics, and my metrics are slightly different than what the metrics, accepted metrics in the market at large are. But to my metrics, it's been a huge success. And we can talk about why I think it was a success, even though it hasn't minted out yet. And we've been developing a community that is unbelievable, of people that are tremendously passionate about the project, people that keep the community humming all week long, and that are like making friends, developing new friendships. OTC, over the counter trading, is a huge thing in my community. Yeah, it's usually a big no-no in NFTs, that you shouldn't trust anybody. Like in our community, is huge, and it's going great, and I'm super happy with it. So NFTs is something that I actually like. I like to say that I am moving into Web3, and I spent these 7 months trying to find my neighborhood, and now I know that my neighborhood are adjacent to some of the projects that I love most: On-Chain Monkey, Shonen Junk, Goats. So those are the projects that I moved next to, and now I'm like this little boutique project that is, basically building something that I consider extraordinary, trying a lot of different things that go against the accepted wisdom, and so far it's been going great.
How are you going against the accepted wisdom in NFTs today?
Well, I think in a lot of ways. I think that primarily it's probably a collection of different decisions that we took since days prior to launch, that together, like individually, they're not anything special, but together they've created an environment that's quite unique. So right from the start, we opted for instant reveal. We were like, we're not going to hold these tokens. We're not going to make a big secret. Like as soon as you mint, you're going to know what it is. And we were really lucky with our contract provider because they built a contract that was unscrubbable. So even though we were doing instant review, people couldn't come in and scrub the metadata and find out what the rare traits were, like on the unminted supply, right? So we built, we have a really unique collecting mechanics. Like our collection doesn't work like most collections. We have like subsets of collections within the collection as at large, which instigates people to engage in collecting traits that belong to families within the collection. So we don't have like 10,000 unique tokens that are basically sharing like, oh, some have like the same blue shirt and some have the same straw hat. Our collection actually has families of collections within the collection. It's almost like a Russian doll. And that stimulates people quite a bit. So that the fact that our collecting mechanics combined with the instant reveal, combined with a really inexpensive entry point, allows people to mint in volume. So we have very few holders. I think we are at 357 right now, but our holding percentage is to mint the tokens about 10%, which for most projects you would think that that's terrible. And you go inside our community is it's like uber vibrant, and people love being in it. It's like really good energy, really healthy energy within the community. And so if you combine the mint price, the collecting mechanics, the instant reveal, and also the fact that we prize quality of the community over volume. So we're much more. I would prefer any day of the week that we get like 5 new really good holders and collectors than 500 flippers. So the amount of flippers that we have in a project is low. It's enough to keep people the floor price from coming to a complete halt. But if you combine everything, you would see that I think our project is tailor made for a slow mint, and I think a fast mint would actually be worse for a project.
Well, and it makes sense with the project itself. So for Wize Fellaz and Wize Nanas, I hear is the next time around. So what I want to hear about, I love the quality of community, and I did mint my first Wize Fella the other day. He's quite cute. I would
Oh, I'm so excited! I'm so happy to
all
have you in there.
all over him if I were, 30 years older. He's so hunky. So I want to know about your mission. I mean, basically, you started Wize Fellaz and you have a unique philanthropic bent to it, which is one of the reasons why I
Yeah,
immediately minted in. When the Arch sent me some information, you sent me some information, and I saw what you guys are up to. For me, it was absolutely, and a totally affordable mint right now, too. So
yeah, absolutely.
about
Yeah.
the mission and what you're grounded in. We talked about the antique phone behind you and that you like antiques, and that made me laugh because you're doing Wize Fellaz, these bearded old guys who are basically
Right.
superheroes going to save the world, and you're going to save the world with your philanthropy. So talk to me about that and your mission and why Web3 fits so beautifully with what you're doing.
You know,
And
it's funny because first of all, I think Web3 is the future. I'm a firm believer in that, right? So I think that by developing these mechanisms that can develop a decentralized economy, that's key to more inclusivity. So Web3 for me is it's a given. I think it's going to happen. But Wize Fellaz, let me tell you a little bit about Wize Fellaz because it makes it easy to understand the philanthropic side. So the story behind Wize Fellaz is basically a secret society of these elderly warriors that has existed since like the times of Mesopotamia, right? So back in the days, there were these group of like really powerful young warriors called the Fellowship of the Strong. And they used to fight tyranny back in the day using this tea to keep them healthy and strong and get extra powers. One of the warriors rose through the ranks. His name is Ajax, and once he finally became the leader, he gained access to the recipe of spring tea and decided to fork the recipe and create a version that was specifically for him, where he would like tune the potency of this potion to get him extra powers. And he became the strongest one in the Fellowship of the Strong, but at the same time, he became very violent and paranoid. as a
Mm.
side effect of all this extra power. And in one of his fits of rage and paranoia, he went on a killing rampage and basically assassinated most of the members of the Fellowship of the Strong. The surviving members is scattered through the world and live the rest of their lives normally, like anybody else. When we're there in the like older years, and they decided to get together and basically do a post-mortem to try and identify what they did wrong. Why did the fellowship fail so badly? And what they realized is that giving that much power to people who had no life experience was basically a bad idea. So they decided that they were going to reform the Fellowship of the Strong. They would call it now the Fellowship of the Wise. And the main difference is that they would only accept new members who had already lived a full life. So people who had formed a family, lived a career, and now we're in their like later years, past their prime, but they were basically now worried about bigger problems themselves, right? So that became the leading criteria for new members of this fellowship. So the fellowship, fast forward, the Fellowship of the Wise to modern times, they basically live in this really posh hotel in Miami Beach. It's like this Art Deco hotel that fronts as a nursing home called the Wize Fellaz Nursing Home. So for everybody, it's just like a nursing home for the wealthy elderly. But below this old hotel, there is a secret bunker, if you will, whereas the secret society of the Fellowship of the Wise still operates today, and each and every one of these grandpas has like a special ability. So it's sort of, the way I describe it is sort of like Scooby-Doo meets Ocean's 11. So it's like this heist story where these groups of old men, each one with a specific like skill set, will go on these missions to try and save the world. So in one mission, you may have someone who's like an expert in like firearms, or someone that can jump really high or teleport or whatever. In the next mission, you might have like an IT specialist and someone who can like punch down brick walls, And the idea surrounding the ethos surrounding the Wize Fellaz is that aging, it should not be a limiting factor for achievement. That even though you pass your prime years, that you're still quite capable of doing amazing things. And that's the ethos that ties in the entire project, including the philanthropic end of it, which is Wize Fellaz supports basically NGOs who are invested in the United States, helping people overcome what is known as the digital divide. So the digital divide is basically this chasm that is growing and separating people who are like digital natives, or who can like get along with technology really well, versus the people who can't. And on the side of the people who can't, there are the people who are in poverty and don't have access to technology. But a big contingent of that group is older people who, even though they may have access to technology, they don't know how to use it. They feel uncomfortable with it. They feel insecure. They feel like they might be judged by people because they don't know how to use it. They feel like they might break some of these devices. In some cases, they don't have the financial means to get access to the devices or to data plans. So it's a real big problem, and it's been identified in psychology circles where it's a driver for depression, for anxiety. In some cases, it may worse conditions like Alzheimer's and diabetes, and it's also been linked to early death. So it's a big deal because these people spent their entire lives creating an infrastructure, an analog infrastructure that they would count on in their older years, and this infrastructure is basically being decimated, right? So while they don't know how to call an Uber, cab companies are going out of business. While they have a difficult time using internet banking, the local branches of their bank are closing down. So basically, the infrastructure that was built to support them has disappeared or is in the process of disappearing, and they don't have a way to bridge that chasm on their own. So there's some NGOs that are working towards like alleviating that problem. And also in Brazil, which is where I live, I'm also helping NGOs that are focused on elderly people who are living below the line of poverty. So these are people who sometimes don't have a family, don't have a roof, they don't have access to good health, medication, food, shelter. So we're donating money to basically fund in a DAO-like manner without actually having a DAO, but in a DAO-like manner to be able to fund initiatives that will support both people who are having difficulty with financial means at the later years of their life, as well as people who in the United States who have a higher quality of life, financially speaking, but are going through this emotional problem that is the digital divide.
This is an incredible spotlight that you're shining on our elders, and it's really interesting to me that you've gone so deep with it. It also explains the ethos of the community of those of us who mint with you and who buy into the project. But what I also say to people, many boomers who are super successful are anti-crypto, and I say, well, it's because they built their entire analog life, their financial
Right.
success, their kids have gone to college, they've got beautiful homes, they built it on the IPO structure and on the stock market, but basically that's broken. You know, obviously we know that so many corporations have become so much more powerful than governments, that governments don't really matter. Democracy is being
Right.
destroyed by these
Right.
mega companies and oligarchs. And that for me is why I'm so passionate about Web3, because I feel that by pulling that decentralized network apart and disempowering some of these mega entities and going to probably I'd love a 3.0 Web 3.0 model, but a 2.5 model is even better, because we're taking from the oligarchs and the mega companies and hopefully redistributing in a more democratized manner. And that's why I'm so
Right.
super passionate about getting mission driven creators like yourself into the space to empower conscious creators to create a more conscious, equitable and sustainable healthy planet and future for humanity. So
Absolutely. I
I
agree
love
with you
your
100%.
project so much. And one of the things I'm so interested in is you stated from the beginning, you know, in 2009 you saw these uptrends and you changed your business. In 2015 you saw these uptrends and changed your business. I have two things that I want to ask you. One is, you and I were speaking about the fact that we have enormous respect for our elders and for
Right.
even physical objects that are antiques, like that phone behind you. And yet we're
Yeah.
both futurists. So for you, what is it? What is that click in your brain that makes you a futurist who is passionately honoring of the analog world? How does that work?
Um, well, I think that question comes in two parts, right? So I'll address the futurist aspect of it first. I think the primary force that keeps me involved with the next thing and that keeps me like endlessly seeking it is curiosity. I'm just incredibly curious. So show me something that has like technology involved in it and that I don't understand how it works, and you pique my interest. I'm just a tinkerer by nature. It's part of who I am. I'm incredibly curious. I am also very entrepreneurial. So what I mean by that is that I have a very high tolerance to risk. So I can function in environments that are chaotic because of their early nature, and I can work with small teams in in an environment of high uncertainty without getting anxious and getting all like bent out of shape about it. So that allows me to play in like areas that are generally well suited for futurism, and feel at ease at that playing that role. As far as liking older stuff, is that I get, I'm about to turn 50, so I'm 49 and a half now, and one of the things that comes with age is a respect for things that are real, I guess is the best way to say it. I've spent enough time in technology to understand that not every progress is positive, that not everything that is new and shiny is better than what used to be old and dusty, that sometimes it's much better um, to sort of like repurpose the older things so they are adapt to whatever lifestyle you currently have, instead of like just going straight out and embracing whatever the new thing is. And so I think that um, I read a book once. I was telling you this earlier. I read a book once that talked about like uh, objects that were embedded with
Mhm.
technology, right? And the author like was really passionate about this idea that instead of going like merging every single new tool into a single omni tool that would be the smartphone, what we should be doing is basically trying to step away from the smartphone as much as possible and embed this new technology into everyday objects, right? So the name of the book is Enchanted Objects, and he talks about like being able, instead of having an app on your phone that tells you if it's going to rain, to have an umbrella that's sitting outside and and it glows with like a beautiful blue color when you're about to step out of the house, letting you know that today's a good day to bring it out. So the umbrella is connected to the web in as an IoT device, and is basically fetching data that is very particular to the operation of that one object. So instead of trying to fork everything into a smartphone, basically disseminating technology so it's present in everyday objects everywhere, and you're not so slaved to what he calls like a glass slab, you know. And I very much believe in that, and I think that uh, this passion for technology can live well together with older objects that have a lot more charm and a lot more um, like a welcome presence into your living space than a cell phone.
Yeah, an aesthetic experience, right, with an object rather than just, that's why we live with art, right? Why we have physical sculptures and things, because there's
Exactly.
this energy that lives with physical objects like your beautiful phone that you
And
grew
it
up.
plays to your psyche too, you know, because we grew up with a lot of storytelling telling us about heroes of the old, and
Mhm.
maybe they have a magical sword, or maybe they have a pair of boots that allows them to like jump really high or run really fast. And this idea that magical objects could actually improve your everyday life is
Yeah.
something that is very like ingrained in our Western culture, you know. So I think that we can go a long way towards making everyday objects magical, as
Mhm.
opposed to relying so much on tablets and smartphones.
I love that so much. It makes me think. So I'm an artist, right? I'm a painter. I paint with oil paints. I do commissioned portraits, and now I'm like you. I'm a futurist, so curiosity is the main thing. The hardest thing for me is to actually have a tagline of what I do, because the moment I master soft pastels and I sell out all of my landscapes, then I want to move into the next medium and challenge myself and say, okay, in
Right.
fact, right now I'm creating a 4 foot tall, or I have created a 4 foot tall portrait of Donald Trump made entirely out of Cheetos, right? And it looks exactly like him. So it's my 10K drop that I'm working with
Yeah.
Vintage
And
Studios.
meanwhile, people are trying to describe you as being the pastel lady, you know, and
Right,
now you're like
exactly.
you
People galleries are like, "What do
next.
we do
Yeah.
with her?" Like, there's just no point, but I also love that, because that's the reason I don't work with them, because once something becomes really successful, then they want more and more and more of that, but I'm ready.
Right.
Then I've moved on to new tools in the metaverse. So speaking on, let's transition. Okay, 2 questions. One is, you talked about enchanted objects. 2, obviously, as a book, Enchanted Objects is the book. And I love that you said you're curious, because that's my number one, I think, value besides love is
Hmm.
is just curiosity. If I am not constantly feeding my mind, I get bored with everything myself.
Right. Yeah.
Um,
I
and
think
so,
I think that's the earlier sign of like death, is when your brain stops being curious, because
yeah,
that's like you're
exactly.
basically park, you know.
It's so for me, like for example, I just came across 9 books that are supposedly books that Elon Musk, you know, read would recommend. So of course I ordered them all at once off Amazon. Got to read them. Um,
Right.
so
I
that's
gotta
I
get that list.
right, exactly. I'll get to the list. So because like why wouldn't we, right? It's really actually I just saw an
Oh, even I mean, even if you don't like Elon Musk for whatever reason, I mean,
you
you
gotta
can't
read it,
deny that the
right?
guy, that his mind is a powerful one. So
Yeah.
why not read the same stuff?
Exactly, exactly. I mean, talk about curiosity. So what I want to know is for me, for example, I'm constantly learning new tools. As soon as I hear like a collaboration I'm doing right now with this music company, Weave sent me this platform called Cables. So I'm going to learn it this week, or, you know, I may not become proficient at it, but I'll become proficient enough to see if it's a tool that I like or not.
Right.
During
Right.
COVID, I told myself during 2021, I would learn 21 new Web3 art making platforms and apps, whether it's platforms
Wow.
for
That's
minting
a
or
lofty
apps.
goal.
Well, it was, or 2021, I wanted to learn 21. Well, I learned over 43 and then I stopped counting.
Wow.
Yeah, so because
Oh
of just like
man, you're a
constant, and
sponge.
I know, and then I made art out of them, right? And my problem
Right.
is I make so much, and then I get bored with the minting process, because unless it's minting a collection of 10,000 and scalable, as an entrepreneur, I get bored and I'm like, I don't want to do one-to-ones unless I've got an admin that can
Right.
mint that stuff for me, which can't because my wallet, right? I don't want to give them access to my wallet. So
Right.
bottom line is, what tools? So essentially, like when you did that architect to CG career transition, I'm guessing you were in CAD and somehow that CAD
Right.
transferred over to set design or commercial. Like, what,
Yeah, you'd
give
be right.
me the historics of your tool usage in terms of the generals. Like, okay, you were an architect, you used CAD, you went into CG, you used this, then you went into
Oh,
this
you're
and
gonna love
this.
this.
Oh, I can't wait, because this is
Oh, you're gonna love this.
breakout.
Okay.
Okay, well,
Okay. Can
tell
I
me.
go straight into Web3 because
Boom.
all the other
Do it,
stuff is
whatever your
okay.
heart desires, Bruno. You just do it.
Okay. This entire collection. Okay.
Okay.
And there's a cool story behind this, but this entire collection, every single art piece that you see, all the assets, every artwork on the website, all the artwork I do for marketing, everything was basically designed.
Oh
Sorry,
my,
I just got
you got one thing. I'm like dancing between 70 apps, and you're like, yeah, I use this one, and I'm
no,
mastering
no,
it.
no, 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 no. Yeah, sorry, I made a little boo boo with my mic here. Um, so here, this is my main tool.
I
Okay.
know,
Yeah.
I love it.
Here am I talking about how I don't want like everything to come to this. But here's the thing. I have this, and let me show you. I've talked a lot about this, but I've actually never shown the set state of this cell phone to anybody.
I can't
This
wait.
this will be the first one. I don't know if you can see how beat up this phone is.
I can.
It yes. This is a Galaxy Note 8
Okay.
2017. It comes with a handy little pen, and
Wow.
it has an app. It has an app on it called the Sketchbook Pro, which is made by
No
Autodesk.
way.
Autodesk is it's a company that I've worked with their tools for a number of years because they're heavily into CGI,
Yeah.
and everything was done with this. So the reason for that was when I started working on this collection, I was moving from Brasilia, the capital of Brazil, to the
Mhm.
city I live in now, which is called Fortaleza. And my wife, she works with media as well as I used to, and her company was doing all the move from one city to another, handling the
Mhm.
whole thing. And I was like, well, this is a big company, and they'll be very quick about this. Pretty soon, I'm gonna get all my stuff. I was sleeping at my mother-in-law's apartment while we were waiting for our stuff to arrive, and I was like, I'm just gonna start sketching these ideas on my old phone, and in a couple of weeks, my stuff is here, and I'll be able to actually transfer everything to Photoshop and start working on a proper system, right? Like with the tablet and whatnot. And so, as it's common in Brazil, bureaucracy had the best of it, and it took over 2 months for my stuff to arrive. So by the time the thing, my computer and all my other things arrived, I was already way too invested into the pipeline that I had developed to produce the assets for the collection. So I ended up taking the entire project all the way to completion on this Galaxy Note 8. So Samsung, thank you. If you're listening and you want to sponsor
Well, they
Wize
need to give
Fellaz,
you a
here we are.
serious sponsorship for that. That's actually incredible to me, because I always say I love this little device because I could literally make my living off of this. But for
Right.
me, I have this entire page is basically art apps. Well, there's a couple on there
Uh-huh.
that aren't art apps, but pretty much, I have my go-tos that I use my apps and I talk about them and like this is the most intuitive and this is the easiest to use. And I've started going back into even Procreate because I think, okay, well, I just need to kind of focus instead of starting to experiment some more. And Sketchbook seems a little bit like Procreate, right? I mean, I think I've
I
used
would
Sketchbook,
say
but it would have
I
been a
would
long
say
time.
Sketchbook is like the poor man's version of Procreate.
Wow.
Sketchbook
And
is
you,
very bare. It's very bare bones. And I'm like, I've worked with Photoshop for as long as Photoshop has been around, right? I
yeah.
started with Photoshop in
Hmm.
1990, 1990? No,
Hmm.
1992, something like that.
Okay.
So I've been working for Photoshop. I can use Photoshop really well. So when I migrated over to Sketchbook, it was primarily because Sketchbook had better drawing tools. So to draw like you can use the sketchbook to edit a photo to save your life. It's terrible at that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's really good. It's really good at sketching, hence the name. So it actually handled the artwork quite well.
Huh.
I've had files where I used to have, I've gotten up to like 70 layers
Seven
in
zero.
one is 7-0 in one session, so it handled the layers quite well. The Wize Fellaz collection is done at 1280 by 1280, so you can actually zoom in quite a bit with before you start seeing pixels
Good.
in it. The lines are really nice and crisp, and I would say that the hardest thing about it wasn't actually doing the artwork. That was actually not too bad. The hardest thing was project management. So,
Yeah.
like particularly like handling files,
Mhm.
doing keeping versioning, because I come from CGI, from visual effects. I'm used
Mhm.
to working with large bodies of data, and I've had very very particular ways of like managing data to be able to version up, to be able
Mhm.
to have to have accountable backups for all that stuff, to organize everything in file systems that make sense for someone to go through, even if they're not part of the project. So
Mhm.
file management was a big deal. I don't think, and particularly, I think I was only able to do it as well as I did. And maybe people are gonna tell me that I'm wrong about this, which is fine because I haven't actually used an iPhone in a decade. But the last time I used an iPhone, you can actually access the folders directly. Like iPhone does this thing where it keeps all your access to files is through apps, right? So you can actually like dial through like the folder structure and be able to access the files directly. And you can in a Samsung. So I was able to actually create like a nice little project structure within the phone that I could then upload to a Google Drive and be able to keep like redundancy that way. But that was the crappiest part of the whole process. Everything else, like
That's
the
so
artwork,
I know,
wasn't
I
actually too
hate
bad.
project management. It's luckily with my 10K drop I'm doing, I've partnered with someone that is gonna handle all the stuff I don't wanna do, and I'm like, "Thank you, God," 'cause I just
Yeah,
okay,
and I got up to like almost 400 traits in this collection. So it was a lot of
that's
files to keep
amazing.
track of.
That's
Yeah.
plus your backgrounds and all that stuff. Okay, more technical questions for creators. So two things. How did you do that file management? Did you use a GAN platform? Did you individually draw each of these characteristics and then GAN them through a platform?
Right.
And what was your file manager tool that you actually used? Were you using Slack or how were you coordinating with your team? Because I'm assuming they're international, like all of our teams. And three, how are you digitally watermarking your artwork? Because
Well,
that's a
these
big
are really good
challenge.
questions.
Yeah.
Yeah. My team is definitely international.
Yeah.
Yeah. He lives in Brazil, so I'm the team. so 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 coordinating was actually really easy.
Oh, that's amazing.
Uh, yeah, no, I started getting help, and I absolutely love the people in the project, and they're
Yeah.
like godsend. But I started getting help a couple of weeks prior to the project launch. And that's when people from communities like On-Chain Monkey and Shonen Junk actually came in and started doing some hands-on work, like helping with spaces, doing producing marketing material, that kind of stuff. And nowadays I have, like in the community, a lot of people that help me with the management of the community, with mods and with doing tweets and spaces and stuff like that, which is, and yeah, it's an international team. So I have a mod in New Zealand, I have one in Germany, I have one in Seattle. So we pretty much covered like 24 hours of the day as far as mods go, which is great. And I love them. And I definitely could not do what we're doing right now without them. But prior to the mint, it was just me. So that meant that file management was a lot easier because I knew exactly how files were named, where they were saved, how often I backed them up, how many versions. Because see, it starts getting to a point that is such a ball of data that you have to also not only have to keep it organized, but you have to also offload old stuff, because otherwise it starts getting in the way of the new stuff, right? So and you run the risk of making mistakes. And in this collection it was particularly true because the collecting mechanics allows, like the way the collection works is that we have the 5,000 tokens. It's basically a 10,000 token collection. It's been divided into 4 editions. So it's the bronze, the silver, the gold, and the diamond. Right now, the only one that we launched is the bronze, 5,000 tokens. Silver is going to be 3,000 tokens, gold is going to be 1,500 tokens, and diamond is going to be 500 tokens. And the idea is that as they become more rare and more valuable as you go through the editions, they also contribute a larger amount of the revenue to NGOs. So the idea is that once we get to diamond, the people that are collecting diamond, who are the most prestigious of all the tokens, are mostly whales who are interested in doing well, right? In doing good. So so the idea here then, going back to your question, is that because the collecting mechanics works in such a way where you can have like a PFP, and then you can have that PFP can have a picture in the background of another fellow, right? So you got the Wize Fellaz in the front, and then you got a picture in the background that has a picture of another fellow. That picture that's in the fella, it's a decoration. It's a set piece. There we got lava lamps, we got bonsai trees, we got clocks, we got phones, we got a bunch of different decor in the back. Some of the decors are these pictures. They have a Wize Fellaz inside. The trick here is that Wize Fellaz that's in the frame, it's not just a drawing, it's an actual PFP that exists somewhere else in the collection. So you can actually mint like a Wize Fellaz. That is the fella that's hanging out in this frame back here. And in some cases, there's like almost like an inception moment where you have a frame that has a fella in it, and that fella in the frame has another frame in the back. So like 3 frames deep. With another fella also in the collection. So what that ends up creating is a situation where we have the standard set, the extended set, and the master set, which is how can you cut across the different traits and the different collections, the way you collect these different sets. So you have not only the PFP that's in the foreground, but the one that's in the middle ground and the one that's in the background, and any other PFP that may have these fellas show up as well. So he creates this complex matrix of possible collection sets that people get insanely like hyped up about completing, right? So and because we're talking about not just a random trait in the back there, but a trait that has to exist, and it has to be linked through the main PFP via metadata, then file management, which just became like this huge deal. So it was I had to run the generative process several times in order to be able not only to get the main guys to show up back there, because they had to be minted, right? So they had to show up. What shows up here has to exist in the foreground as a mintable token. So I had to run that generative process several times, which generated duplicates of files that were like starting to get confused with one another. But also, what ended up happening is, because I'm not a dev, I had to use the limitations of NFT Nader is the software that I use, which allowed me to build one-of-ones, but didn't allow me to save the state of the collection. So every time I came into the software it was like it never saw me before, and I had to rebuild the
Oh,
collection from anew every time.
oh my
So
gosh.
file management became a big deal because of that. And I think that had I not had the experience of working with large data sets from doing special effects for film, that could have been the Achilles heel, because
Yeah,
because it was, a lot of it was done by me organizing the traits manually and then minting them with the proper location and linking the metadata together so they would make sense. If I wasn't well organized, that would fall flat. And the idea, I think, is that the creators of NFT projects really need to hone in these skills of actually understanding how the metadata works behind the picture, because a lot of the file management has to do with protecting the provenance of these tokens, and also protecting the randomization of the tokens, so you don't convey to your community that you've somehow massaged the metadata to gain some kind of upper leg on the rest of the community. So transparency is a big deal, you know.
I'm glad you brought that up. And that's one of the reasons why I really wanted to start doing these interviews, because one of the big things that I've found is I'm a pretty smart business person, not the greatest, but a pretty, done all right as a full-time artist for 20 years. And, but when I got into NFTs and I started recognizing the relationship to devs, and that's a whole different conversation we could have, is
Right.
where does the developer, where does the developer start and the artist end? And there's so much overlap. And when I have several collections, with 40 years of artwork, that I could be doing generative collections with existing work that I have now, that all I have to do is shoot some transparency PNGs and I'm good to go, right? And I stack them
Right.
in the elements and run them through Launch My NFT or some platform that takes a percentage, and then just launch a collection. But what you're doing is you're acting as your own dev because of these data sets, because of the, all of this comprehensive information. It just speaks even more highly to your talent and your wisdom, because this is not easy stuff. I tried to run a generative dev, I guess, sequence to test it out, and I just essentially, Achilles heel, I was out. I was like, I'm not doing this.
Right.
There's going to be an easier way, or I'm going to hire somebody, because this is not my bliss. So that is such great information. Okay, digital watermark. What are you doing? Because I know that there's a Photoshop. I know that there's a Photoshop program, but essentially, layering of, and I watched the YouTubes about how you can digitally watermark a GIF, basically. I don't even know. Is there even a word for the motion graphics that we make, that are artwork, moving artwork, right? That we make through all our
Motion,
apps.
motion graphics.
Motion graphics. Okay, so the motion
Yeah.
graphics, the motion art that we make. Evidently, Photoshop has a layering tool that you can move that layering watermark through the entire motion graphic. But what are you doing to watermark Wize
I'm
Fellaz?
not.
You're not.
I'm
Okay.
not water. No,
It's
I'm
just
not
the metadata.
watermarking, because no. The reason why I'm not interested in watermarking the tokens, it's because I think there is a, if you're doing a one of one,
Hmm.
and exclusivity is like your main selling point, and people may, and it's extremely, because you might include the original artwork in it as an unlockable bonus material for your NFT, right? So you got the low resolution one that's going to be displayed on most marketplaces, and then you got the actual whatever, 100 megabyte like original art that you're going to include as an unlockable trade. If you're doing that, then I could kind of see why you would want to like watermark it. But I'm doing PFPs, okay? So it's like, yeah, I love my art. I think it's beautiful. I'm like the Wize Fellaz. I think they're funny and quirky and bizarre in a lot of ways, and I really love them. But I don't think that their biggest value is represented in terms of a lasting asset, is represented necessarily by the uniqueness of the art. It's more represented by the community, what the community stands for,
Okay.
and also, and that is, and the way that the community can retain the value of that token is through the provenance. So to me, the data that's behind the image is a lot more important than the actual image itself, because That is what says I am a member of this community. And to me, to Wize Fellaz, in my opinion, the biggest asset I have by a long stretch is the community. That's why like a lot of people love to talk about like minting out fast, right? Like, oh, how important it is minting out fast. That's how you know if a project is healthy, if it was able to mint out in the first 24 hours, 48 hours, whatever. I tend to disagree with that. And I don't think that that's like I don't think you can have a fast and hard rule for what is best for each project, because I think each project brings a different value proposition to the table. So you may have projects where the value proposition is to buy early, sell fast, get the hell out, and that's what you're getting from that. And you know the founder may be clear about and transparent about that, and the community knows that that's what it is. So hell, you know, there is a space for degenning. There's a lot of the people doing it, and who am I to say no? You can't degen, right?
Yeah.
Go ahead, be happy. That's not that's not our proposal. Our value proposition comes in terms of building a long-lasting IP. The Wize Fellaz is being built to be an animated series and to be a tabletop game. So I'm a big Dungeons and Dragons fan. I love D&D. I play D&D. I'm a DM. I'm a dungeon master. So the idea for me is that I'm basically building an IP that the storytelling of it is built with the participation of the community, not as a dictatorial like Hollywood style screenplay where one person sits down and writes the whole lore, and then all you do is you experience that as an audience and you don't have any agency in it. I'm trying to build a lore world, a story world, where the major pillars for the story are present. The major elements that you're going to need to have a cohesive world setting are there, and then I invite the community to come over and help unfold the detail events that have happened in this world and that make it so interesting. And the idea for that to happen is that the community needs to last a long time. And for the community to last a long time, they need to have fun. One of the things that I prize the most in my community is that it's really fun. People come into Wize Fellaz and they have a really good time. We were able to build, that's what I think is really awesome about the community. We were able to build a community where people come in and they're extremely friendly to one another, because the minting price, because the collecting structure demands that you mint a lot of tokens to be able to find the what I call the golden foils, like using the metaphor to the Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, where people were going through the chocolate bars as fast as they could to find the gold foil ones. That's kind of what happens in Wize Fellaz, because people are trying to build these sets, and these sets have like very specific gold foil NFTs that make up the family of collectibles, right? So what happens is that people mint large amounts. So even though we have like 357 holders right now, all of them own a ton of tokens. So if you look, if remember how we were talking about market wisdom, wisdom will tell you that if you have a low ratio of holders per token, per the total supply of tokens in your project, that there's good indications that that project isn't healthy. There's probably like a really large holder who's doing wash trade. He's basically selling that and then buying himself the tokens and holds a really large amount of tokens. So you look at it like 5,000 tokens, 357 holders. That doesn't seem right. In our collection, it actually is great, because that means that every one of those holders, no one holds like an insane amount compared to everybody else. Like everyone holds lots of tokens. Why? Because it's cheap. So people mint very fast, lots of tokens, trying to find the golden foils, right? That creates some issues with floor price that we're trying to deal right now, because because you're discarding all the silver foils, right, in search of the golden one. So it creates a situation where your floor could be overpopulated. But at the same time, because the tokens are cheap, people were really generous with the tokens. So you see a lot of people doing OTC. Most of the trading happens outside of OpenSea. Once they mint, they trade with one another. So you see people in the Discord server, hey, add me as a friend. Let's get together. They get together in direct messaging and they exchange token per token or token per ETH. and they do all like we had. I think it was not this weekend, but the weekend before. If you go to OpenSea, we only transactioned 11 tokens. That same day, we sold over 600 tokens in one day. And that was all the current members basically buying the tokens and then trading them outside of OpenSea. So OpenSea is not even prepared to register the success KPIs that we are working with. Because to me, one of the KPIs that I really value in our project is the community happy? And what are the measurements of happiness for a community? Well, you need to have financial prospects that are satisfying to you. So as you look at your investment that you made in your token and you try to imagine what that's going to be worth in the future, it has to be something that you're like, okay, I'm good with that. That's what I want. So that's number one. So financial prospects are really important. But then comes in the thing that I think Wize Fellaz is different from everybody else, the culture. When you come into the culture, everything inside our Discord is historified. So when I make announcements inside the Discord, we don't refer to the Discord as the Discord. We refer to the Discord as the nursing home. Everything is the nursing home. So when you come into the nursing home, and I, as the director of the nursing home, write an announcement for the community, I write in the voice of the director of the nursing home. So I write as if I was writing an email to actual residents to an actual nursing home. So I'll change the way I speak. I speak in flamboyant language, as if I was this old British dude that is managing this very fancy hotel, right? So I don't call the ticket support channel. I call the ticketing channel the concierge. And when you come into the concierge and I answer your ticket, I answer your ticket as, hi, how are you doing? I'm so happy to have you at the nursing home. What can I do to help you? And the person will go on about what the problems are. And I'll say like, well, let me see what I can do for you. Give me your wallet and let's try and work on your problem. So I storified the whole process. And
You've
since the whole process,
Jenkins, the valet for the nursing home, basically.
Absolutely.
You're the collector of wisdom, of the cultural wisdom as a character, which then creates so much possibility for the future there. It's so interesting. I could listen to you forever. And by the way, remember that picture of Nana that you sent? So
right. Yeah.
I did my version of Nana's for your culture.
And you know what? I think you wear it super well.
Why, thank you. I just need silver hair. I have loved this conversation. I need to wrap it up because, we're basically at our hour and I want to be really mindful of the time. And I've just taken so many notes. I have a million more questions for you about using social tokens and more of your favorite tools and the possibilities and how do you see, Web3 going? And so, and are you in AR, VR? Are you in Meta? Basically we talked about possibly, designing in crypto voxels and sandbox and, all of these tools that make us curious and excited to be creators in coming from Web 2.0 into Web 3.0 and supporting one another and doing so. But I'm super excited to be supporting your project. I'm super excited that I minted one of your old dudes. I don't know if he has a name or not, or I'll show you what he is. And I'm so grateful, Bruno, that you would come and spend this time with me. I just want to have you give a shout out to everyone. How do they access Wize Fellaz on OpenSea? Because I know the spelling's a little unusual. Again, I want to congratulate you on your Oscar. I mean, hello, that's kind of amazing.
Oh,
so
thank
everyone
you.
who's watching this, if you've heard how incredibly brilliant Bruno is and his extensive experience in media, his futuristic viewing of media, because what we know we haven't covered in this conversation is that every one of the characters that he's creating is not only tokenized, but can also be storyized as moving forward, just like in Bored Ape Yacht Club. So there's just an infinite amount of possible split story making for writers.
And we haven't even touched on the Forge. The Forge is another thing that's going to be awesome, where we're going to be
What's
able
the
to melt
Forge?
tokens to.
Oh,
The Forge is basically a way for you to, like, we're going to allow you to melt together 3 bronze tokens to create a what I call a silver plus token. And that silver plus token is going to inherit all the best, like your favorite traits from the tokens that you burn. So that creates a deflationary mechanism within the collection that's going to help raise the floor price, but it also gives a tremendous agency to holders in terms of being able to produce tokens that they feel much more like emotionally aligned with. So it's a tremendous thing that we're doing. That I think the Forge is probably going to be one of the most awesome things about the project. It's not an original idea. We didn't come up with it. We actually got the idea from the people at the Goats project, but we're trying to implement it in a different way. And
yeah.
I think it's probably worth like just an entire conversation just on the Forge. I think we should probably do some spaces about that.
All right, you know what? Let's do that. Let's do some Twitter spaces about it and just explore. I would love that. And I want to thank you for your time, everyone. Thank you so much for watching and sticking around with us, listening to this creator to creator conversation. Bruno, can you tell everyone how to go and mint a Wize Fellow? What the website or
Yes.
the tree is? Just give us that. Spell it out really clearly, and I'll put it also in the description.
Well, the easiest thing to do is to go to our Twitter profile, because all the other links are there, right? So if you go to @Wize Fellaz, and Wize is WIZE FELLAZ. So basically change the S's in the traditional spelling for Z's. @Wize Fellaz and on Twitter. And when you get there, there's a link for our Linktree page. And in this Linktree page, you'll find the wizefellaz.com link for our website. If you go to the website, in the blog section, there's the Wize paper. And in the Wize paper, we talk about our mission. We talk about how we are like aligned with the United Nations Sustainable Goals Project. We talk about like everything that's going on with the digital divide and why it's important to support the elderly. We talk about like what the plans for the future are and how we're going to be developing this project into a more extensive IP. There's a lot of the work and the lore in there as well. So the website's a good place to go. The Twitter profile, and I welcome that once you're at the Twitter profile, definitely jump into Discord, because at Discord is where you really feel the difference. Because it's one thing to go to a website and read about what the nursing home is like. It's a very different thing to actually feel the nursing home. So come in, say hi at the Discord, and buy 1 or 2 fellas and see what that does when you come in showing up that your fellas in there, and see like how the people reflect. The floor price is below 0.01 right now. It's really it's almost a free mint at this point if you're shopping at the floor. We also have a liquidity pool that you can go and deposit your fellas for staking at the NFTX website. So you can go there and sell your token and get instant liquidity. You can swap your token. You can stake your token. So we're developing very fast, and we wish everyone would come and feel what it's like to be in a community where not only you're cherished, but it's safe for you to be to park yourself in between degening trips. So you go out there, expose yourself to some risk, then come back and hang out in a safe place where people take care of one another.
Oh, I love that. Isn't that just the communication of that alone? This is a place to come and be cherished in between degenning trips.
Yeah.
I think we should end
We're a
with
safe harbor. That's what Wize Fellaz is.
safe harbor.
Come
I love it
when
so
you need
much.
to feel safe.
So beautiful, so beautiful. And it just speaks to how beautiful the project is and how exciting and interesting. Bruno, thank you so much for your time today. I'm so grateful. And let's do some Twitter spaces and start playing in this creator to creator conversation, onboarding Web 2 people into Web 3 who are conscious, mission driven, and creating those cherishable safe harbors for everyone in Web 3.0.
Yeah. We're here. We moved into Web3 for the long run. So I appreciate the space that you've created for us to talk about these things. I love your energy. I think you're an amazing interviewer. Thank you so much. And I look forward to having spaces with you. It's going to be awesome.
Thank you so much. You have a beautiful day. Thank you for your time, everybody. Make sure you go to Wize Fellaz, and we'll see you soon. Take care. Bye.
All right, bye-bye.